morning, everyone. Hope you've all had a great week. I can say here it's been a week of changes weather-wise. Minnesota can't decide what she's up to, which ironically is a little bit of what the topic I have to talk about today. So grab your cup of coffee, settle in for a hot second. So this morning I kind of just felt like I wanted to share a little bit of what my journey has been like the last couple of years. I felt quite a few times when I've been not necessarily discontent, but feeling unsettled. And it's been interesting, to say the least. I felt like God has been stretching me to try new things I never thought I'd do before, like to step out in faith. It's been a little crazy. So part of that, like that discontent, I'm going to call it, it's not necessarily discontent with life. It's just kind of like an unsettled feeling, like you feel like there's something coming, but you don't know what. And you feel like, maybe you should prepare, but you don't know what for. So obviously there's easy ways to prepare for something if you know you're going to have something physical coming up. I'll give an example. I plan to visit my daughter in Colorado in a couple weeks. Well, this chick, I know I've said before, I do in-home therapy, but a lot of my therapy in the winter ends up being done sitting in a coffee shop, sitting in someone's living room or basement, in a car. We drive, we talk and we drive because it's the only place we can find a private spot. None of those lead you to have good physical condition. I feel like I've been the bear that's been preparing for winter and taking on all sorts of food and storing it away for a time when you might need it. Yeah, so that doesn't help you when you're going to go to Colorado. And for me, Colorado equals hiking. I don't know if I can go to Colorado and not expect to hike. It's April, the weather's going to be beautiful. Yeah, I might have to dodge some bears. They're probably out and about, but this body, not ready. So this last few weeks, I've been walking a lot more, actually not skipping leg day, right? I've been doing all sorts of things that prepare my body because I need to be in shape. My cardio needs to improve. My muscle strength needs to improve. I need to be ready for that. But sometimes preparing, that's a no-brainer, what I just said. But sometimes that's tangible, but the things that we're preparing for sometimes aren't tangible. We feel like we want to do something, but we're not sure what it is. A lot of things have come to me when I've been exercising. Exercising has always been a great way to connect with God, creation, nature. I prefer that most of my exercise would take place outside, but in Minnesota, that depends on cold, ice, snow, the depth, freezing rain, all these kind of things. It's not always safe to go outside in Minnesota and exercise. So I choose to sit on the couch instead with my cuddly blanket and my cup of coffee and my book because it's more comfortable. But during these seasons, I feel soft, weak, not ready for much of anything physically, except for the normal chores that I have to do around here, which again isn't a ton. I don't live on a farm. If I was still out in a farm, I would be, ready for more things, right? Because there'd be physical activity every day, but we don't do much of that anymore, So anyway, so the physical part, that's easy to see. I know what I need to do about that. It's easy. Get off my butt, move, do something, right? What if it's not so easy to be prepared in other ways? And when I was saying about feeling restless, there's been so many times in my life when I just felt like there's something else coming and I don't know what. So how do we feel prepared for these types of seasons? How do we know, God, what are you doing next? How do I be ready for something that I don't even know what you're calling me to do? I just feel something and I'm not sure exactly what it is. Sometimes it is exercise. I think God definitely does speak to you when you're on the treadmill. Maybe it's more diving more deeply into his word and kind of getting some insights there. Maybe it's talking to your pastor or a mentor or something like that. Maybe part of this that nobody wants to talk about, maybe it's increasing your patience so that you become a more skillful waiter. And what does being a skillful waiter mean? To be waiting peacefully. Let's be real, waiting can be painful. It can be so painful at times, especially if we're waiting for like a physical healing for ourselves or for a loved one. Sometimes our pain's not in our bodies, but it's in our minds. Sometimes there's a person we live with that causes us distress, right? Sometimes it's somebody who doesn't live with us, but we deal with every day or see often enough that when I see this person, just stuff rises up in me, right? So my thought was, in our waiting, we're waiting for God to change something, right? But maybe the one that he's looking to change is us. Ouch, right? So sometimes we feel like we're wandering around in a desert and we're looking for things to change, the environment around us to change, things like that. But what if the other factor is us? And we're the ones who need to change. I was looking around in the Bible, obviously, because that's where I go, to see, obviously, there's been a lot of change in the Bible, a lot of people waiting on God to do a lot of things. And I come across this passage of scripture. There's a couple of verses that came up when I was researching, but I decided to read a chunk of the chapter because it talks about, it's the prophet Jeremiah writing, and he's lamenting God's people being overthrown and taken by the Babylonians. And you all know that probably if you know anything about the Bible, God's people have been overthrown multiple times because they just kept wandering away from God. They weren't ready when the time, when they were called to do the next thing, they had been wandering off over here, mentally, physically, emotionally, the whole works. They were off over there. So in this scripture, I think Jeremiah is looking for God to reveal truths about himself, but also truths about ourselves, like what we do in this desert or whatever we feel like we're in. So I'm just going to read this. It's Lamentations 3:19 through 33. So it's a chunk of scripture. So remember, he's talking about the Babylonians and taking Israel off. He says, I remember my affliction and my wandering, the bitterness and the gall. I well remember them, and my soul is downcast within me. Yet this I call to mind, therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait on him. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. It is good for man to bear the yoke while he was young. Let him sit alone in silence, for the Lord has laid it on him. Let him bury his face in the dust, and yet there may be hope. Let him offer his cheek to the one who would strike him, and let him be filled with disgrace. For no one is cast off by the Lord forever. For no one is cast off by the Lord forever. Though he brings grief, he will show compassion. So great is his unfailing love, for he does not willingly bring affliction or grief to anyone. Wow, what a picture of just terrible things that are happening. But the fact that the Lord wants us to learn, to be brought back, to learn something, to be ready for something. Here's a couple more encouraging scriptures. Psalm 27:13 through 14. And I say encouraging because Psalms was written by David, who was in a whole hot mess when he was writing these. So here's another one. I remain confident in this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. Psalm 33:20 through 22. We will wait in hope for the Lord. He is our shield and our help. In him our hearts rejoice, for we trust in his holy name. May your unfailing love be with us, Lord, even as we put our hope in you. Sometimes when we're kind of waiting for something, maybe our passion has run out for certain something. Maybe we need to put a pause on something. Maybe I just recently stepped down from doing music ministry at our church after almost 5 years. 4 years of it playing piano and singing, and 5 years of basically just, singing with the worship team. I loved it. Still love it. But I feel like right now God's saying, you know what? Take a step back. Do something else. Do something that's really uncomfortable for you. Like what I'm doing right now. Do something that's uncomfortable. Because it's what I'm leading you to do. Last thing here. I've been reading a Bible plan in my Bible on the YouVersion app. That's the one I have in my phone. It's called Divine Direction. That's the name of the devotional. And again, it's in the YouVersion Bible app on your phone. So I'm going to read just a couple chunks off of this because I really thought it kind of brought everything together. It says, do you sense something new happening in your life? Do you want something different? Even if you don't feel it now, it's always a good idea to keep your heart prepared for change because it's a guarantee. Change is always going to come, right? Often we're called to stand our ground when the pressure mounts, but many times we need to take a risk. Do you feel restless where you are? God may have planted a divine desire in you to serve him in a surprising way. Maybe he's inspired you with a specific group of people, an idea, a problem, or a place. Maybe he's calling you to go. Follow that hunch. See where it takes you. Embrace the adventure. The best way to take a leap of faith is to get a good running start. That's a little bit of that preparedness we were talking about. To go somewhere else, you have to leave where you are. To go somewhere else, you have to leave where you are. You have to leave what's known, what's comfortable, what's predictable, and what's easy. Step towards your destiny. You may have stepped away from your security. Who knows where God will take your story if you just let him? One day, years from now, you'll look back in your life and see the whole story. What's it going to be? I feel like God was calling me, but I was afraid, so I did nothing. Is that what your story is going to be? Or will you have a faith-filled adventure to tell? The difference is whether or not you will go when God says go. So I guess the encouragement today is if you feel a restlessness inside of yourself, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That could be God doing a little tug on you to say, hey, I got something else. You may not know what it is yet, but be looking because it's coming.